Unbelievable stuff they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt. For a long time, Egyptians have not only been known for their historical pyramids, but also their mummification process. Undoubtedly, there is some unbelievable stuff they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt. I guess you got it right. Now, what are some of this crazy stuff they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt? Join me today as we find answers on this unbelievable stuff they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt. Let's go. Egyptian doctors. Egyptian doctors specialize in various fields of study. According to Herodotus, in ancient Egypt, there was a high degree of specialization in the field of medicine. Unbelievably, Egyptians were advanced medical practitioners of their time. Doctors were masters of human anatomy as they did extensive mummification processes. The mummification process involved the removal of internal organs such as the heart, liver, and intestines. Don't you believe in that? Also, the ancient Egyptians were equally familiar with pharmacy. According to historical records, ancient Egyptians were involved in the pharmaceutical profession, which greatly depended on administering medications. For instance, they were familiar with herbal drug preparation. In this case, they prepared various medicines from plants. Surprisingly, the mighty Egyptians used herbal medicine like cannabis and opium. This is according to the Ebers Papyrus. On the other hand, cloves of garlic have been found in ancient Egyptian burial sites, such as the tomb of Tutankhamen and the sacred underground temple of the Bulls of Saqqara. Amazingly, herbal medicine was steeped in wine, which was drunk as oral medicine. Moreover, Egyptian doctors extensively focused on healing only one body part. This early form of specialization was noted about 450 BC by a historian and traveler Herodotus. In discussing ancient Egyptian medicine, Herodotus wrote, quote-unquote, "Each physician is a healer of one disease and more, some of the eye, some of the teeth, some of what pertains to the belly." For instance, these ancient Egyptian specialists had specified names. For example, dentists were known as doctors of the tooth, who built the ancient Egyptian pyramids. Notably, pyramids were not built by slaves. Egyptologists believed that great pyramids were instead built by peasants during flooding when they could not work in their lands. These were ancient Egypt indigenous workers who were paid for their services and also ate extremely well. This has been evidenced by archaeologists who have found the pyramids' constructors' tombs and other signs of the lives the workers lived. This is by the fact that skeletons of workers who built the pyramids commonly showed the signs of arthritis and other ailments, and as evidence suggests, these were paid laborers and not slaves. Perhaps these workers were greatly skilled artisans who created the fine artwork of the pyramids. The artisans of the pyramids completed the engravings, painted the pyramids, and they did the hieroglyphics. Indeed, the ancient Egyptian artisans had greatly taken pride in their craft. According to the graffiti found near the historical monument of ancient Egypt, the artisans often assigned humorous names to their crew, like the drunkards of Menkaure or the friends of Khufu. However, the concept that pyramids were built by slaves was first conjured by the Greek historian Herodotus in the 5th century and is now dismissed by most historians as a myth. This is because ancient Egypt was not averse to keeping slaves, but Egyptians appeared to have used slaves as domestic servants. Did the ancient Egyptian workers organize strikes? Indeed, ancient Egyptian workers were best at organizing labor strikes. I know you seem to be worried about the strikes because Pharaoh was regarded as a kind, living god. In ancient Egypt, workers were not afraid to protest for better working conditions. Can you imagine protesting against your god? For instance, during the 12th century, workers who engaged in building the royal necropolis at Deir el-Medina organized a strike. The laborers were disappointed after they did not receive their usual payment of grain. The protest took the form of a sit-in. In this case, the workers surprisingly entered a nearby mortuary temples and refused to leave until their grievances were heard. Unbelievably, at Ramses III's temple, the workers were shouting, "We are hungry," as they were demonstrating. Amazingly, this methodology worked as the laborers were given their overdue payments. Indeed, it was one of the greatest strikes in ancient Egypt to be recorded in history. The strike was organized during the reign of the New Kingdom pharaoh Ramses III, as the Egyptians were set in motion for the Grand Jubilee Festival to honor Ramses III for doing his best as he approached his 30th year on the throne. Unfortunately, things fell apart just 3 years before the festival, when the monthly wages for the tomb builders and artisans at Set Ma'at arrived almost a month late, thus workers organizing a historic strike. According to Wilkinson, the system of paying the necropolis workers broke down altogether and, as a result, prompted the earliest recorded strikes in the history of the ancient Egyptians. Indeed, the strike was significant because the tomb workers and artisans were not only influential, but also were among the highest paid and respected people in ancient Egypt. What about ancient Egyptian makeup? Ancient Egyptians impressed vanity as they treasured makeup. Unbelievably, both men and women wore copious amounts of makeup. Egyptians believed that makeup gave them the protection of the gods Horus and Ra. Ores like malachite and galena were ground into a substance known as kohl to make these mesmerizing cosmetics. For instance, the makeup was applied around the eyes with tools made of bone and ivory. In ancient Egypt, the women would stain their cheeks with red paint and henna to color their hands and fingernails. Both sexes wore perfumes made from cinnamon, oil, and myrrh. Perhaps Egyptians believed that their makeup had magical healing powers. Truly, the lead-based cosmetics worn by Egyptians along the Nile helped them to eradicate eye infections. Was Cleopatra in Egypt? According to King Tut, no figure was more associated with ancient Egypt than Cleopatra VII. Cleopatra was born in Alexandria and she was part of the Greek Macedonians that descended from the Ptolemy dynasty. Besides that, she was a trusted lieutenant of Alexander the Great reign of about 332 BC. Moreover, Cleopatra is well known in ancient Egypt for her romantic liaisons and her influence on forming military alliances with Roman leaders, such as Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Also, her exotic beauty and powers of seduction made her famous. Surprisingly, Cleopatra was one of the few Ptolemies to learn in ancient Egypt. In this factor, Cleopatra's family members refused to learn in ancient Egypt, and as a result, they regarded to speaking their Greek native language. But Cleopatra had a strong desire to learn the ancient Egyptian language to teach her native Greek. As a result, Cleopatra was regarded as the reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian goddess, Isis. According to historians, Cleopatra was the last active pharaoh of the ancient Egyptian empire. Unbelievably, contrary to tradition, she married her brother Ptolemy XIV, with whom she ruled with. However, later Cleopatra engaged in a relationship with the Roman ruler Julius Caesar in 47 BC, to which they gave birth to a son who was called Ptolemy Caesar. The mighty queen committed suicide with the poisonous snake's venom. This was after Mark Antony's troops lost the Battle of Actium against the army of Augustus. Cleopatra held an asp snake into her body and let it kill her with its venom. Did the ancient Egyptians to forge one of the earliest peace treaties on record? Undoubtedly, for over 2 years, the Egyptians fought against the Hittite Empire for control of lands in ancient Syria. As a result of the deadly fight, there was the rise of bloody engagements such as that of 1274 BC's Battle of Kadesh, with both the Egyptians and Hittites facing threats from other people in 1259 BC. Their kings were forced to negotiate a famous peace treaty. Interestingly, this agreement ended the conflict and absolutely, the two kingdoms agreed to aid each other in the event of an invasion by a third party. For instance, the Egyptian-Hittite treaty is now recognized as one of the earliest surviving peace records. The Egyptian version of the peace treaty was engraved in hieroglyphics on the walls of the two temples belonging to Pharaoh Ramses II in Thebes. On the other hand, the Hittite version was engraved on a clay tablet found in the Hittite capital of Hattusa and was preserved on baked clay tablets among the Hittite royal palace archives. These are just some of the unbelievable stuff they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt. All of the things we see today have been in some way improved to stand the test of time just as seen in ancient Egypt. You can share your thoughts in the comment section. Indeed, these strange stuffs are outstanding. Feel free to join our YouTube channel to enjoy awesome stuff on ancient Egypt.